Hey everybody, Matt here, and I wanted to tell you about something cool my publisher is offering if you pre-order my forthcoming book, Filthy Rich Politicians. After you do that, go to filthyrichbook.com and sign up, enter your receipt number, and I will send you an autographed book plate. You will also have access to chapter 1 and the intro. You can download that immediately today, as well as access to a podcast where I talk about the book. So, pre-order Filthy Rich Politicians and go to filthyrichbook.com today to get these bonuses. Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Oh, Thursday morning, almost Father's Day. Do you have Father's Day plans?
It's going to be a little weird. My kids are going away to sleepaway camp.
Nice, best Father's Day ever.
That is not my Father's Day present. So we're going to be driving them there. It's going to be, like an hour and a half drive probably from where I live, and I think we're going to try to stop and get some crabs. I'm a Maryland from Maryland, and some Maryland sort of steamed
even though you're Western Maryland, you still identify with seafood.
Absolutely, yeah. There was no distinction when it came to that. For whatever reason, we still eat those crabs with the Old Bay seasoning, and it doesn't matter if you're in Ocean City or Salisbury or if you're out in Frostburg, you still eat crabs.
Not lobster.
No, I didn't have. I think the first time I ever had lobster in my life was probably at a Clyde's restaurant, Lobster Fest or something, when I was in my mid-20s. Grew up eating crabs, not lobster. That's Massachusetts, Bill. That's where you are, right?
Well, yeah, there's definitely more. I mean, obviously, Maine is more known, but you definitely can get plenty of lobster around here. Even though I'm inland, I'm in the western part of the state. We still have our lobster roll joints.
I do like lobster. Don't get me wrong. I would happily eat lobster, but crabs are, my upbringing. And I didn't have the soft shell crab until maybe 10 years ago.
Wow.
I wouldn't have touched that.
That's not a Maryland thing.
No, at least not that I know of. Maybe it might be a more highfalutin, sophisticated. I'm like Low Country, you know what I mean? I'm a middle class guy, Bill. But it's living in DC is when I was for the first time kind of exposed and ate things like oysters, raw oysters, and soft shell crabs.
Now, what is West Virginia cuisine?
That's a good question. I mean, I barely live in West Virginia. One thing we have are ramps. Have you heard of ramps?
Yeah.
So ramps are they're only seasonal, for a very short time. It's like a vegetable kind of thing that grows in the wild, and it's prominent where I'm at in West Virginia. It's not really a main course, but it's something that you use and to accentuate other meals. But I don't think there really is a quintessential. It's not like, some states have barbecue. Maryland obviously has crabs. Boston's Beantown. I don't know that there is a West Virginia thing. Good question.
Maybe that's your job, Matt. You need a side hustle. Develop
maybe that's my next book, Bill. Maybe that's it. I go through West Virginia. I can tell you where I'm from in Western Maryland. We had stuff that no one's probably ever heard of. Slippery pot pie is something.
I don't know this.
Slippery pot pie. In fact, there was a rock band a local rock band that called themselves Slippery. I think they might have been rock, but anyway. But Bill, I got into not a Twitter controversy, but a Twitter discussion the other day. I was noting when I grew up, we called it a sliding board, not a slide. And it turns out that is a thing. It wasn't. My kids make fun of me for calling it a sliding board, but it really is a thing. And similarly, I think with food, pop, soda, where I'm from, we would call a sloppy Joe or a manwich a steamer.
That's wrong.
You guys call lobster a steamer, right?
When I see places on the menu, I just see lobster roll. I don't see steamer.
When I'm saying like this was not just colloquial, like it would be like on the lunch menu at elementary school, steamers and fries.
That's just wrong.
And it's just,
Why would you steam a sloppy Joe anyway?
I don't know, but I am. You know what though? I am fascinated by these local regional things, including eating crabs. For me, I grew up. We would get the mallet and all that, and I learned at Ocean City, Maryland, a trick, a way to exhume the meat from the crab without getting into the super messy part where you sort of tear open its belly. And there are methods and ways to do it. And I grew up thinking it was totally normal. And I think for a lot of Americans, eating those crabs is a weird thing to do.
Well, if you ever get a chance to have come up here, have dinner with my wife and me, my wife can tear apart a lobster like nobody's business. So
nice.
She'll teach you a few things.
Now, would that be? Is it possible that I could do that at the same time as Sugar Shack season, or are those two distinct, different times of the year?
Yeah, I don't think you get. Lobster's more of a summer.
I think so. Yeah.
Sugar Shack is late winter, early spring.
Well, nevertheless, that maybe this could be the book, the tour where I go throughout the country.
I mean, you should be coming up. You should be You should be checking out the candidates in New Hampshire.
Totally, it's not a bad idea.
I'm an hour from Keene, probably a little less than an hour from Keene, which is the southwest corner of New Hampshire.
It may happen. Let's crowdsource this trip. How about a Kickstarter to make this happen? Enough throat clearing for you, Bill?
I was waiting for the money to roll in when you said that.
You just go to patreon.com/Matt Lewis or patreon.com/Bill Scher and see what you can do.
So we are now 2 days after Trump was arrested and arraigned, made his plea. And I just saw a poll. It's not the only poll I've seen, but there's a poll from Morning Consult yesterday where Trump was over DeSantis by 40 points.
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost at the point where you want to call it over. I mean, obviously, it's all early and all that stuff, but
yeah,
you go back to. I mean, I've looked at polling. You can look at real clear archive polling for every race back to 2008. And through other Googling, I can pick up stuff from 2004 and 2000. And from what I can tell, nobody has ever led a multi-candidate primary field by this much since George Bush in 2000. Doesn't mean that things can't fall apart, but I'm not convinced that it being early is enough of a counterpoint when you're this far ahead and the candidate is this well known and all the negative stuff is already out there and he leads by more and more every time a negative thing occurs.
Yeah. And you can always throw out the caveat. It's early and something could happen, and it's like, oh, really? I didn't know that. Yes, something could happen, but nothing has happened. The thing we know about Donald Trump is crazy stuff happens, and it doesn't shake his support of the Republican Party. Like, what would have to happen to actually shake his control of the party? He could die. That may be the only hope. I mean, it might be.
I do want to talk more about what could happen, but I want to ask you something else first. I mean, I think you have a fairly good. You don't have a two-dimensional read on the Republican Party. It's not just Trump cultists and smattering of never Trump. There is something in between that. There are people who are like, yeah, Trump's good. Doesn't have to be Trump, but I'm fine with Trump. There's a sort of soft Trump element out there. But it seems like that kind of voter gets pushed towards Trump when there is an indictment or a jury verdict or what have you. I mean, do you have a good feel of the median Republican voter and why they are inclined to circle the wagons around Trump. If it is a circle the wagons dynamic, does that hold? Do you, if we don't get a trial in several months, does that fade, and does that give someone else an opportunity, a few months from now? I mean, do you have a good sense of what's happening in this gray area of the Republican Party?
Yeah, there's a line in the I think underrated movie First Blood where John J. Rambo is on the loose out in the mountains, and Colonel Troutman. Bill, are you familiar with this movie?
I've never seen a Rambo movie start to finish.
This is actually a legit good movie. Don't watch the other Rambo movies, but First Blood is a legit good movie. And Colonel Troutman, who was his Green Beret, commander in Vietnam, comes in, and Brian Dennehy, who plays the sheriff, says, "Okay, Mister, Green Beret, what do you think I should do with your boy?" And Colonel Troutman is like, "Let him walk away. Just let him walk away. You'll pick him up in a couple weeks at a car wash in Seattle. There won't be any incidents. He'll go peacefully. Just let him go." And Brian Dennehy, the sheriff, is like, he just killed, like one of my guys. Like that's not happening. But I think the one, sort of ironically, the one chance Republicans had of replacing Trump was boredom. Like Trump kind of fades away and becomes boring. And whenever he's indicted, and don't get me wrong, nobody's above the law, and I think he should be prosecuted and all that. But that has this ironic effect of circling the wagons around Trump. And I think that is probably the underrated thing about these Republican voters. A lot of them in my family, these are people who, if you met them in a different context, you would say like, "Oh, these are kind of rural country folk, but they're decent, honest, nice, law-abiding people." But I think the really underrated thing is the degree to which those people, not the crazy overt cult members, but these people, they have zero trust in the media, zero. And they have very little trust in institutions, including law enforcement, believe it or not, and the Intel Intel community. It everyone sort of knows, I think, anecdotally, that trust in institutions like the media and elites has eroded. This is where it really matters. They're not coming for me, they're coming for you. Like that resonates, and not just with the cult members.
Now, we're seeing from the other Republican candidates a lot of conflicted messaging outside of, Christie and Hutchinson. This mix of DOJ is weaponized, but I can't defend Trump on the specifics here. The mix of that depends on the specific candidate, but you're seeing some uncertain trumpets. Do you think the merits matter at all here? Is there any chance that if more and more Republicans start saying, "Well, I mean, this really wasn't good. He is on tape here. He did say that he knows this isn't declassified." I saw Jim Jordan on, I think it was CNN. After CNN and Meet the Press, I think it was CNN, where he's like, "Well, Trump declassified this." CNN, because Dana Bash was like, he just said on tape that this wasn't declassified. And like Jim Jordan's like, why take Trump at his word? Like they were talking past each other.
Well, there's this other theory too out of the Wall Street Journal. Have you seen this? It was I can't think of the group. Judicial Watch, maybe.
Yeah.
Someone who works there wrote this piece saying that they tried to get Bill Clinton kept recordings from an interview he did, and they sued and tried to get it And because of the Presidential Records Act or something, Bill Clinton did not have to turn that over. That it was deemed that because he kept it on his person, or kept it when he left the White House, it belonged to him. Other people have pointed out that this has nothing to do with the Presidential Records Act,
right.
but that there are a few lines of argument that like Marco Rubio, who's been a huge disappointment to me personally, Bill. It was on Fox News defending Trump. To answer your question, if history is any predictor, the longer time goes on, the more people will defend Trump, and the people who are criticizing Trump will become lone voices, and some of them, there'll even be attrition. Some of them will come around to defending Trump, I think.
So I was telling you before we got on that I'm working on a piece. It's not done yet. It'll probably go out next week, where I'm trying to really pinpoint what happens when a primary candidate, back of the pack, middle of the pack, what happens to get that breakout moment? Now, most of the time, the front runner at the beginning is the front runner at the end. We don't have a lot of comeback stories. It happens. McCain was a comeback in 2008, and Obama was a comeback in 2008. But Trump basically led wire to wire. Hillary, had a bump in the road, Bernie, but essentially led wire to wire. Romney, kind of hung it, started in front, weathered some bumps, came on the other side. I guess Kerry was a comeback. In 2004.
He was a comeback, but the asterisk there is that Dean was the front runner, right? It wasn't
but Dean was never really a strong front runner.
No, but what I'm saying is, if I'm trying to think of who might have been a stronger front runner. I mean, Gephardt wasn't that good. Lieberman wasn't that good. But if there had been a Paul Song, I don't know, if there had been like a Democrat, and more of a traditional Democrat, who had been in the pole position all along, that would have been maybe more surprising that Kerry. But Kerry was always...
Kerry led some in the beginning. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah,
but I think he wasn't totally out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So he might be a case where he actually was front runner in the beginning, but I'm sure that I think it was pretty jumbled in the front end of 2004. Lieberman led something early on out of name ID. Anyway, your true comeback stories are rare. So what happens? So I'm not even arguing that just because you get 15 minutes means that you win, but you got to get at least that. You got to get your moment to have a shot at this thing. So what happens to get that moment? And to cut to the chase, the vast majority of those cases are in debates. Obviously debates don't move the needle. They often don't move the needle, but examples where someone gets a breakout moment, it usually is because there's some kind of soundbite or some kind of exchange that brings in a fresh injection of media attention. I mean, there are other cases where a candidate camps out in a state and has a slow build. Every time I tweet out a national primary, I always get, there is no national primary poll. I always get, there is no national primary. I'm like, okay, yeah. There are examples where something's brewing at the state level and you want to keep an eye on that. Bernie was leading in New Hampshire while still trailing nationally, and then eventually won New Hampshire. John McCain caught Bush in 2000 in New Hampshire before he was ahead nationally. But as it stands today, nobody's doing that. Trump's ahead pretty much across the board. But you can plant your flag in a state and make a mark that way. That's one thing that can happen.
So like Santorum had a very mini...
Santorum was like that. Santorum did the 99 county thing in Iowa.
Huckabee,
and he caught on very late.
Bachman, Huckabee, Herman Cain.
Bachman, Huckabee. This is 2012 now. Bachman, Huckabee were definitely. Bachman had debate moments.
The Ames Iowa straw poll.
But I think her spike was that first debate, which I remember thinking, like, what did she do here? Like, this is nothing. But she goes, Barack Obama is a one-term president. Like, that's it. That's what gets you your moment. But like, people just love that. But she didn't have a second act, so it didn't sustain. Huckabee had a good debate in the November 2007, but it was also at the same time they had that Chuck Norris ad. You remember that ad? I think the Chuck Norris ad actually was the first spark for him. It just was.
By the way, let me just say, I've said it before, no better celebrity endorsement ever than Chuck Norris, and I'll tell you why. Because he works both sincerely and ironically. Like, if you're a hipster, you want a selfie with Chuck Norris because it's funny. And if you're a redneck, you want a photo with Chuck Norris because it's awesome.
Right.
Like, there is no better endorsement. And then the whole, like, He-Man wears Chuck Norris pajamas or whatever the joke was. I mean, it was just, Chuck Norris really had a moment.
Right. So Huck rode that very, very smartly. And you actually don't have a lot of examples where an ad is the catalyst, the initial catalyst. But I do think that is the case with Huckabee and Herman Cain, who had his moment just before the Huckabee moment. I don't think it is precisely the debate he had. There were like a bunch of debates in September, and I think he did pretty well in those. And this is after the Rick Perry flameout. Because Rick Perry had the moment in August where he comes in because he was a late entrant, and then he doesn't fall through in the debates. Though it wasn't quite the Oops debate. I think the Oops debate was later.
He was already kind of reeling by the time the Oops debate happened.
But Cain has some 999 action. In the debate. And so I really think Cain is a rare example of the plan actually being the catalyst. You don't have a lot of examples of, like, here's my white paper and now I'm a hot commodity. I think it's pretty much Elizabeth Warren 2020 and Herman Cain 999. But that is part and parcel of a couple good debates in September, and then capping off with a Florida straw poll win. And like, that straw poll leads to a burst of attention. It fades out quickly.
Yeah.
But it all it's plan and debate and straw poll. And the straw polls aren't really much of a thing anymore. So you really can't rely on that. But I do think the media attention really follows that straw poll win for Cain.
Let me ask you, there's Vivek Ramaswamy. Who I guess he's trying to be Andrew Yang without the big idea. But maybe he does have a big idea, because he came out the other day and held a press conference saying that that every candidate running for a Republican nomination for president should pledge to pardon Donald Trump if they win. I understand there's some animosity between the DeSantis camp and Ramaswamy, but what, does this guy?
How sad is this? How sad is it that DeSantis has to worry about Ramaswamy? That just shows, like, how far he is falling for being considered a tier 1 candidate. That is the battle. That's the front he's waging right now.
But Ramaswamy is someone that, like, I didn't know 6 months ago. I mean, he's this young, very smart, filthy rich politician who kind of cornered the market on woke, or at least decided to make that his brand.
But he hasn't even cornered. That's what's sad about him. He hasn't cornered the market on it. That is a hyper competitive market.
That's fair, but he came out of nowhere. And is he going to have a moment, like a debate moment? Or?
I mean, I think you would love one. Like he has some media skills and he has money. But unlike Yang, he doesn't have a signature idea, and being anti-woke is not his. He
What
doesn't
about
own it.
pardoning Trump? Could that
What's it?
be?
He's now shopping for an idea because his initial idea isn't enough. And so he's trying to find something else. So, I mean, look, Elizabeth Warren didn't have one idea. She doled out policy paper after policy paper and had a slow build over the course of 2019 that peaks in September of that year. Swami is doing like a real lame version of that because his ideas aren't that distinctive. And so he's fishing for a moment, and like pardoning Trump is not a policy idea, number one, and two, you hardly can own it because it is a proposal that is in service of your opponent who is lapping you by 1,000,000,000 in the polls. So I think I don't think that's going to be his ticket, but I'm sure because he has media skills, I'm sure he would love the debate stage. I'm sure he has like 10 ideas for how he would pop in a debate. And I think the problem here is, and I think we talked about this before, if you're Donald Trump and you're leading by 30, 40 points, why are you debating?
Yeah.
What forced you onto that stage? I mean, if he might do it because he's stupid, but he could very easily conclude, I don't need this debate stage. They all do. Like that is the way that they get their moment in the sun, and I have no reason to give it to them.
Except that Trump doesn't think or behave based on logic and reason. So that's why I think he will debate at some point. Maybe not. He's already skipped debates in 2016. He wasn't at all the debates, but I think he will be on the stage at some point because I don't think he can resist the attention, and I don't think he can stand anything that might make him look weak or afraid.
But again, Bachmann, to some extent Huckabee, some extent Newt Gingrich in 2012. He had several good debate moments that eventually kind of built on each other.
The John King moment was off the
hook. That was late though. He was rising in polls before then. The John King was when he attacked John King. But what he did earlier than that, and this is sort of like both Gingrich and Ted Cruz in 2016 both had debate moments where they attack the moderator.
Yes.
Like that's kind of that. If you can be the first Republican to attack the moderator, that is like as a guaranteed play.
I mean, Newt allegedly asked his wife for like a threesome, as I recall, and somehow became a folk hero because of it, because he attacked the moderator for daring to ask about it.
But before then, because that was the John King moment in January before South Carolina, which helped him win South Carolina. But I think it was November, he attacked the moderator for
Juan Williams, right? Was it Juan Williams?
It might have been. But he attacked the moderator for trying to force the Republicans to attack each other, and he while being all generous to the Democrat candidates. And Ted Cruz did a similar thing where he basically went down the line and was like listing every mean thing that the moderators were saying about his fellow Republicans while treating the Democrats like they were heroes. And the Republican voters ate that stuff up. So, DeSantis is dying to attack the moderator in a debate. He's not going to lay it on Trump.
And he has experience doing that kind of thing.
Exactly. That is his go-to on the stump.
Yeah.
So if you're Trump, why do you give him that opportunity? And if Trump doesn't go in, maybe DeSantis wants that moment, but he also, if in a Trumpless debate, DeSantis is the target. Everyone's gunning for him. Why do you subject yourself to that? So I think DeSantis probably punks out if Trump punks out. And
I think you should write this column about all the different variables, like that.
Right.
Why would Trump debate? And if he doesn't, then DeSantis becomes the target. I think that's interesting.
And so, and maybe if there's an RNC debate and Trump and DeSantis don't show, maybe the rest show. Maybe it's like an undercard debate. Like, Fiorina in 2016, because they had that huge field. So they did undercard debate and main event debate. They didn't randomize the way Democrats did in 2020. But Fiorina has a good undercard debate, gets enough of a bump that she gets into the main event, and then has an exchange with Trump about her looks that Fiorina is seen as besting Trump over, and she gets one more bump out of that. Now it fades because she has no business being on a debate stage at all. Because granted, neither did Trump, but neither one had much political. Fiorina was worse than Trump in that she had already lost a campaign prior. But so she can't sustain. But she needed that debate moment to get a shot.
Bill, what do you think of this Miami mayor Suarez?
I really want somebody who knows Miami to explain Miami politics to me, because I don't get what's going on here. Not only
Obviously Trump was arraigned in Miami. He stops off at the Versailles Cafe
right,
or whatever, this
right.
Cuban place. They sing happy birthday to him. Now, interestingly, let me go on a quick rant here, because there's a West Virginia tie-in. Suarez's first cousin is Alex Mooney, my congressman. Alex's mom, Lala Suarez, escaped the Castro regime. I've actually interviewed her on my podcast before. But because Alex Mooney is now running for Senate in West Virginia. This is sort of a brief aside here, but this is worth a rant at some point.
Yeah.
Shelley Moore Capito is my U.S. senator. I think it's her son has been endorsed by Kevin McCarthy to be, since Mooney's out of the way, for Congress, to run for my House seat here. And then I believe it's her nephew who's running for governor. So I could potentially, Bill, be governed with a senator, governor, and congressman, all of the same family.
Amazing.
But Suarez, what's he up to? What's he doing?
So he's mayor of Miami. He apparently has had a long-running feud with one of the congressmen from the Miami area, Carlos Jimenez,
who is a Trumpy kind of guy, right?
Well, Jimenez got off the Trump bus in 2016 after Access Hollywood.
Okay.
But has been Trumpier since.
Okay.
And he goes on TV this week attacking Suarez for being a fair weather Republican, not being, down
this was
with
like
Trump.
Neil Cavuto, I think.
Yeah. And I've just done a little bit of Googling, so I'm not the expert here. But Suarez and Jimenez have had beef for years, and I don't know the total origins of it. It's not just Jimenez and Francis Suarez, but it's also Jimenez and his father Xavier Suarez,
whom I've met, former mayor of Miami, and I think he was chased out of there on some sort of scandal or something.
So there's layers here that I don't get and don't understand, but I deeply want to know about right now. And mind you, this is all happening while two other Floridians, namely Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, are the two leading candidates. So much of the Republican Party is Florida right now, and Florida is bonkers in its own right. And I don't think we fully understand how deep the bonkersness goes.
I think you're onto something, and make America Florida again, or whatever it is. There's something interesting happening, and whether it's Mark Caputo or I've had a couple of these interviews where I talk to people about Florida, and I think I've just scratched the surface. It's an interesting place, but I do think Suarez seems to be running, but not against Trump. right? I mean,
Well,
when I say running, I believe he's filed the paperwork as
yeah,
of today.
yeah.
I don't think he's announced officially, but
Well,
let's just
I think this speech is today, and there was a
is that
video up
today. Okay.
yesterday. I mean, the
But
video.
presumably he's running, but just like Ramaswamy, not against Trump, I'm guessing.
Well, here is just me being totally knee jerk conspiratorialist. Not really knowing what I'm talking about. Um, I'm curious if he is there to kneecap DeSantis.
Hmm.
To say that DeSantis isn't all that in Florida. I know I'm the mayor of Miami. I know it's grace of Miami. DeSantis didn't do squat for me. Blah blah blah. Thank you, Donald Trump. Put me in your cabinet. I mean, he can't be Trump's running mate because they're both from Florida, unless Trump is going to say his primary residence is New Jersey or New York, which I guess he could do. I don't know exactly what the rules are when you got to establish your residency, but you can't be residents of the same state. Cheney changed his residence from Texas to Wyoming late in the game to get on the Bush ticket, so perhaps they could do a switcheroo later on. But it would be a little too obvious to make him VP. I would think cabinet is more of a likely payoff if it is that much of a scam.
This would be like he's playing the role of a stalking horse.
Yeah, right.
Now let's get really conspiratorial now. Alex Mooney, whom I worked for in 1998, my wife ran his campaign in 2002 in Maryland. First cousins with Mayor Suarez. In fact, Alex's middle name is Xavier or Javier, as they say. Alex is running for Senate in West Virginia against our governor, Jim Justice. Who will Donald Trump endorse? Or will he?
Well, he's done dual endorsements before, so.
Justice is up by 30 points or something. Yeah. But wouldn't it be interesting if he supported Mooney? I don't think that's likely. But
I mean, Trump's done weird things. He's endorsed dark horses before and then tried to take credit for their. I mean, that's what he did with DeSantis. DeSantis wasn't leading. Sometimes Trump runs in front of the parade, and sometimes he wants to help someone up from the depths, and sometimes he does a lame move and endorses both.
Ron DeSantis is someone that Donald Trump pulled up and made him the governor effectively. Right. I mean, or the nominee, I would say, certainly.
But Trump has, on the Trump scale, operated more like a normal candidate than we've all been accustomed to. Like I haven't seen him do things that are necessarily risky for him, like endorsing someone he doesn't have to endorse. I mean, my take on Trump, I wrote these pieces for Politico, these end of year pieces, how do they do this year? And Trump would always get kind of low marks from me because he would be picking fights he didn't have to pick.
Yeah.
And limiting his breadth of the party more than he had to. And right now, getting indicted and found liable for sexual abuse, which we talk about less and less, weirdly. Like that should be like part and parcel of any. Like even Christie, I don't think has really gotten into it. Like that should be like a mainstay of your narrative.
That just goes to show you how Trump has normalized things that would have been utterly disqualifying and scandalous in any other time.
Right, but all those things have gotten Trump over 50% in polling right now. Yeah. So he has, I mean, he wasn't clearing 50% when he won the nomination in 2016.
Is that an outlier though? I mean,
I mean, it's not just one poll at this point. I mean, I'm seeing multiple polls. I
know he's up. I know he's up big.
Maybe it's a sugar high. Maybe it will slip back into the 40s after the news. But it sort of seems like it's sort of one after another. It's not because it isn't just one indictment. It's multiple things. I'm just looking at the latest numbers here. So last three, this doesn't have the morning consult. I think the last 4 polls have had Trump over 50. And these are all, I think, post indictment. So and the 2 before then, he was in the 40s, which is still pretty darn good in a multi-candidate field. So he has united the party more than he has ever united the party. Not counting, I guess, obviously 2020, the party was effectively united. But when he ran against real opponents before, he was always a plurality choice. There was an undercurrent of discontent to concern about him. There's a whole lot less of that right now.
Yeah, it's wild, but barring some unforeseen, unimaginable event, I just don't see how anybody stops Trump from being the nominee. And then let's go here. And then Bill, I'm exhausted today after teaching this workshop on how to be a pundit all day yesterday. So we should probably wrap it up quick. But you have a piece that just came out at Washington Monthly, where you're talking about how great Joe Biden is doing. Again, the caveat is it's early and something bad could happen right before the election. That's how Trump becomes president. But talk, if you would, about that piece and about how Biden, and I don't even know if he's getting much credit. This is kind of quietly.
Well, yeah,
he's quietly turned things around.
I me's job approval numbers are still bad. He's still low 40s. He did not get a bump with debt limit deal. So it's not like he's out of the woods. But to me, what's more interesting is it's pretty much Republican gospel. Every candidate, any other Republican politician, they'll say inflation's through the roof, crime's running amok, the border is unsecure. Like, that is the main critique of how Biden has ruined America. The exact words might vary a little bit. Trump said just the other day, everybody's getting murdered. Pence said,
I just love how he says things.
We're all dead. We're all lying in the streets dead right now. And Pence said inflation at a 40-year high. Like, these are factually untrue things. Like, there's certain things you can say are sort of eye of the beholder, but like, inflation is not today at a 40-year high. It was last year. We peaked at 9.1%. This is, year-to-year number. Where are the prices this month compared to where they were 12 months from now? Number.
Let me just stop you right there real quick. I just want to be clear. So inflation is not as bad as it was a year ago. But if you take out a year ago, would it then be the highest in 40 years today?
No. We had, let me give you the exact numbers.
Because in other words, I don't want Biden to be competing against himself for who's worse.
Right.
Is Biden from 2022 worse than Biden from 2023?
So over the course of 2022, the inflation ranged from 6.5 to 9.1. That whole time, you can say that was 40-year high, because we hadn't gone past 6.5 since June of 1982.
82.
But once inflation has been coming down since last June, it reached 5% in March. Once you were there, the 40-year high talking point was no more, because in July 2008, George W. Bush, inflation at 5.6%. And you go back to late 1990, George H.W. Bush, we were at 6.3%. So now we're at 4%. This is the number that just came out this week. Now, that's still worse than it was under both Obama and Trump. We had a pretty good run of low inflation. So if you want to say, hey, it's still not where it should be, you can make the case, but the trajectory is really good. And look, it may be that totally sticking the landing is harder than it looks. Does the Fed keep raising rates or not? We don't know. They're taking a pause right now. They got some tough decisions ahead of them. So I'm not saying it's a given that Biden gets to run on on the soft landing. But you can't argue today that everything is totally kablooey.
Yeah.
When you've
maybe everything went
more than
bad
half in a year's time.
Remember, I don't want to compare him to Reagan because nobody compares to Reagan. Tear down this wall. But, but Reagan had a really bad 1982, as we've sort of noted. And they had a really good 1984. And it could be that Biden had his bad days at the right time.
Right. Well, look, in both cases, I mean, Carter doesn't get the credit here. Carter installs Paul Volcker to the Fed. I think it was 79 or 80, but it was late in the game.
I think 79.
And Volcker just interest rates shoots them like insanely. I mean, inflation had been really bad for a long time, not just all of a sudden under Carter. Nixon does the wage price controls in 72. They artificially shoves prices down. Once he lets them off after he gets reelected, inflation goes haywire. Ford does the whip inflation now bit, doesn't work. Carter's bedeviled with it for years. So Volcker was like a last ditch, okay, do what you got to do, guy.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to suck having interest rates that high. But Carter does that. This makes that decision eyes wide open. And Volcker does the dirty work. It's not, Reagan doesn't do that. Volcker does that.
But Reagan reappoints him or lets it, buys into the premise. But you're right. And Biden and the Fed, but they have raised interest rates. And I think now, am I correct that this is like the first meeting that they're going to have where they won't?
Well, that was yesterday. Yesterday they said, okay, we're going to keep them steady for now. We're not saying that we're never going to raise them again, but we're going to pause right now. In fact, they've indicated they might. You're essentially sort of slowing down the rate.
I was essentially out of pocket all day yesterday.
Right.
If anything happened yesterday.
I think Powell, the Fed chair, said like there's still stuff in the core inflation he doesn't like. So that was an indication that you might still see some interest rates going up in the near future. Which people, there was an article in the Washington Monthly, not by me, but by Rob Shapiro, who's a former Undersecretary of Commerce, say he thinks that the Fed should really quit altogether right now. But that's a tough call. It's not an easy call to make. When's the exact right moment to stop? So things might still get bad for Biden in that regard. But as of today, on the right track. Immigration. Biden just implemented a brand new system because Title 42, which was the Trump era public health emergency rules, those ended. And there was a lot of panic that once you get, because basically what Title 42 did was, even though under normal asylum law, you get your asylum case heard and you get to hang around while you wait for your case to be heard. Trump Title 42 is COVID, you might have a disease. We pick you up, we send you back. You don't get a hearing. Boom, boom, boom. And with that going away, everyone's like, oh no, once that goes away, we're going to be overrun. The folks south of the border are going to hear it's open season. They're all going to rush across the border. And what that missed was Title 42 was a shortcut. So you pick them up, you send them back, but you don't keep track of who that person was. There's no penalty for trying again. And the recidivism rate shot up over the past few years from 20% to almost 50%. So you see these high numbers of border crossing the past couple of years. You got repeat offenders in there. You go back to the old rules, which is now Title 8. If you're caught crossing the border illegally, it's a 5-year ban. If you try again, you're caught, you get jail time. So it's a real disincentive to keep trying. And at the same time, Biden is changing how the asylum law is applied and saying, we're creating pathways for you where you apply before you get to the border. And so if you don't do that and you just cross the border, we're going to say that's illegal and send you back. Now, And at the same time, we're going to say, okay, we're going to create a pathway for people who have come from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua. You can get humanitarian parole. That's a 2-year reprieve from the law. You need to go through proper channels to get that, but we're going to make it relatively easy for you to do that. So it's a little, so there's elements that some say are like Trump, but I think it's really different because he's trying to essentially change the flow. So you don't have to / can't just do the dangerous trek across the border. You're signing up on an app and using this humanitarian parole to get in. The initial numbers are good. We went down 70% in border crossing from before the end of Title 42, which granted had a spike. There was a spike, but it was before Title 42 ends, not after, because they're trying to beat the rush, beat the time when you get that 5-year ban. Now the border crossing is much lower, still higher than what it was under Trump. So there's still points of argument you can make.
They didn't have the catastrophe with the optics,
correct,
and and frankly, I think everyone thought that was kind of a lock, that it was going to be nasty.
And it's not random. Like, there is a plan here. There is a strategy to deal with this flow that is moving on the right track. I mean, now I can't know where that looks like 6 months from now, but it's. I mean, just to be fair, you can't say the border is unsecure when you got this really good trajectory over the past month. Now, there's an uncertain element here in that Biden's plan is being litigated from left and right. The ACLU is suing because they don't like Biden saying you can't apply for asylum by just crossing the border. They say that violates existing law. You got Republican Attorney General saying, we don't like you expanding humanitarian parole. That's supposed to be a case-by-case thing, not a blanket thing. So who knows how the Supreme Court's going to adjudicate this? There's not, even if you're a cynical person who think it's all political, like, what's the political thing to do? To, like, screw Biden or to screw immigrants? Who's to say? But it may be like the pieces of the puzzle that Biden's putting together, they get upended, because of court cases. But he's on a good track with it right now. He has a plan being executed as intended. And then there's crime. And I think the crime picture is more mixed, but murder rate past 5 months down 12% from where it was in the first 4 months of 2022. Other indicators kind of go in different, there's certain, I have it in front of me, so I'm going to mix them all up. Fentanyl. Fentanyl is another thing that gets talked with the border. Fentanyl overdoses still shooting way up, but so they did under Trump. They tripled under Trump. They've now doubled under Biden. But Trump had this whole opioid task force, did jack. Fentanyl is still coming in over the border, and the overdoses are still very high. Overdoses have not improved under Biden. They've not improved under Biden, but fentanyl seizures have improved under Biden. Much more fentanyl is being seized, tripled the rate under Trump in 2022. And it's not just random. I mean, part of that is probably just a lot of fentanyl is coming in. Other part is that Biden is deploying better detection technology on at the ports of entry, and Republicans talk about like it's the undocumented smuggling it in. Most fentanyl smuggler arrests are American citizens, like literally 86%. They're going through ports of entry. They're not going through gaps in the border. So it's just to conflate the two things is just not accurate. And then when it comes to crime stuff, so residential burglaries are down, but non-residential burglaries are up compared to last year. Robberies are up over 2022, but they're down from where they were in 2019. Aggravated assaults are down from last year, but higher than 2019. And car thefts are way up. That's the if Republicans wanted to say we have a wave of car thefts, they got a point.
Probably related to the supply chain COVID issue, I would assume.
Could be, but they're still up as of 2022. But murders are down, and certain types of robberies are down. Over the past 5 years, the highest spike, the worst month of murders is on Trump's watch, July 2020.
He promised American carnage, Bill. He lives up to his promises.
What Republicans do is, some of this worst stuff was in the middle of the pandemic and the George Floyd and all these riots in the streets. Those are all Democrat cities doing it. So when the numbers are bad, it's the Democratic cities, and then if the numbers are bad and it's Biden, it's the Democratic president. So it's a lose-lose argument. But the crime picture is a mixed picture. It is not a total ceasing of law and order, everything going into the toilet. But that's not the narrative that Republicans are putting out there. So yeah, Biden's not getting credit for it, but as people in the media profession, you hear Republicans say this, you should say, wait a second, what about this number? What about number? What do you say about this? And with crime, Biden is doing things. He's not defunding things. He's put money into the police. Reason Magazine just said that the omnibus bill that passed in December had, quote, boatloads of money for cops. They didn't like it because they're libertarians,
Yeah.
but that's what the numbers are. So it's not like he's starving police. They're putting money into police. So I just think when we talk about this stuff, I mean, you want to argue that certain metrics are not as good now under Trump, make that argument, but you can't say it's because Biden is not paying attention to what's going on, not doing anything. He's doing things.
Always read Bill Scher. It's a good rule of thumb. So read that at the Washington Monthly. Anything else you want to plug, Bill?
I got to plug what there is to plug for me. What do you got?
Well, I would ask people to go to filthyrichbook.com and pre-order my book out next month. Filthy Rich.
Are we literally 1 month away?
Well, we're not. It's today is June 15th. My book is out July 18th.
Okay, so we're basically 1 month away.
It's
exciting.
It's getting exciting, yeah. But I need your help, Bill, and everyone else out there within the sound of my voice.
I don't want to make you reveal surprises, but are there rollout things that you got lined up?
So this is not the kind of book like that's going to have secret Donald Trump recording. You know what I mean? That's going to roll out like that. There's just a lot of, I would say, interesting intellectual scoops. And every day, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see some hints of it, right? So like just two examples this very morning, the congressional baseball game last night, one of the pitchers was, his name's Flugler. I think it's August Flugler. And he is the least wealthy politician in America, or sorry, probably politician, but member of Congress. I think he's like $2 million in the hole.
So he's literally in debt.
Oh yeah, and not only does he pitch inside because he hit a batter last night at the congressional baseball game, but he obviously does not engage in insider trading because if he does, it ain't working.
Do we know why? Do we know why he's in debt?
No, not off the top of my head. But I will. I need to find out.
I just wonder if is this a selling point or a demerit, depending on what the problem is.
One point is, look, more than 50% of members of Congress are millionaires, and Congress. If you're a member of Congress, you are on average 12 times richer than the median American family. So a lot of politicians are filthy rich, but not Flugler. In fact, with his $174,000 a year salary, even if he saves it all and packs his lunch every day, Bill, it's going to take him a while, I think, to get out of this hole. But not a bad pitcher. The other one, Bill, I'm trying to think of the other example. I can't think of it now. I'm exhausted. By the way, I'm utterly exhausted. But like every day, if you follow me on Twitter at Matt K. Lewis, I'm I am just seeing things pop up of people that are mentioned in the book. Oh, I know what it was. David Frum, our friend David Frum, was tweeting about car dealers and how there's so many people who sell cars are Republicans. And I pointed out that of the top 20 richest members of Congress, 3 of them own car dealerships. 2 of the 3 are Republican. And they all 3 got PPP loans, Bill, for what that's worth.
Interesting.
Yeah. Get the book, filthyrichbook.com today.
I see Fleur was a retired military officer, but I don't see where he lost all his money.
I will do. I'm glad we're doing this because someone will ask me that on the book tour, and I will not know unless I do some Googling.
His brother is president of a Midland, Texas oil company and an investor in Truth Social.
You would think that would be lucrative.
But he's not helping his brother out, apparently.
You know what's interesting, though, Bill? Some of these are not. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I don't know how she's doing today, but I can tell you there was a point where she was deeply in debt. Even though most politicians are disproportionately wealthy, some of them are poor. And Joe Biden didn't cash in really until 2017.
Yeah, when he left office.
Yeah. He had like a window of 3 years where he made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So anyway, get the book, filthyrichbook.com. It really helps if people pre-order. So if you like this show, and in fact, if you want to take whatever you were going to give, patreon.com/Bill Scher, and earmark that for a pre-order, that's fine as well.
Oh, here we go. This is a Business Insider article on the 5 least wealthy. These 5 members' negative estimated wealth stem from high-priced mortgages.
High-priced mortgages. Okay. Now, this is interesting, though, because when members of Congress report their wealth, their net wealth, which they have to do, they are not required to report their home ownership. But I wonder if I don't think that factors into their wealth. That is interesting that he chose to reveal that.
I don't know.
They do not. I'm pretty sure they do not have to report what their home ownership. It does not have to be part of the report. Interesting.
Yeah. So you have 4 others who have negative net wealth, higher than $1 million, less than $2 million. Representative Lucille Roybal Allard, Democrat, Florida. Stephen Horst from Democrat, Nevada. Cynthia Loomis, Republican from Wyoming, and Tammy Duckworth, Democrat from Illinois.
There you go. Super Poor Politicians will be the sequel, starring Flugler.
Till next week.
All right. Thank you. Follow us on Twitter at DMZ Show. Pre-order the book, filthyrichbook.com, and we'll see you back here in the DMZ next week.
All right. Take care.